Hey everybody, Brianna here with another installment of our Insider Perspective series. Today we are joined by Jacqueline Clancy, who is a legal nurse consultant. Super excited to get into all what that entails. And she also has an extensive background in operations and logistics with healthcare delivery. Welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us where you got your start. I know your current role is as a legal nurse consultant, but I love hearing about how nurses' careers, the trajectories that they take, and yours has a really extensive one.
Yeah, so I started a long time ago, in high school, actually.
Oh wow.
Took an LPN course. So
Ah,
I started at 17, turned 18, and finished the course
wow.
right at the gate. I really loved helping people and being able to give back to the community. So
Hmm.
that's how I started my nursing career. I was in a subacute rehab and a nursing home pursuing my RN, went into acute care. And as I was looking around in acute care and ending up managing a telemetry unit, I started learning that some people need more help than the patients,
Hmm.
the nurses and the doctors. I
Yeah.
also asked a question that I'll hear echoing for the rest of my life was, how come every time my patient codes, there's never an ICU bed available for them?
Yeah. Right.
So being inquisitive kind of landed me into that logistical role of
Hmm.
patient throughput and capacity management and helping all milestones throughout a patient's journey in an acute care system
Hmm.
be logistically smooth and prevent that delay of care.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm curious to know, since you started so young, in high school, were you already kind of like a very organized logistical systems thinker? Did you even know that about yourself, or was that something that you uncovered during your early nursing years?
Oh no, it's an inherent, very strong in me. When I was like 2 or 3 years old, I was organizing my stuffed animals. So
Oh my God, that is so cute. I love it. I love it. And now, wow, that's amazing. Um, Tell us about your current role. What is it like to be a legal nurse consultant, your day to day, your typical client, that sort of thing?
It's great for me right now. I work for myself. And I also teach students or nurses who are looking to be legal nurse consultants through a wonderful company called Selma Consulting.
Okay.
So it kind of is split. So with my own business and my own clients, I have a business plan, of course, and I am very granular with how I'm blocking out my time. And
Hmm.
there are certain things devoted to marketing, but I don't
Right.
market myself. I educate myself. I educate my attorney clients or prospects. I look
Hmm.
at them like they're patients or patients' families
Yeah.
because they really don't have the medical expertise to be able to navigate
Right.
at the level that we can do for them. So,
Yeah.
typical day, I wake up, I'm living my perfect day. I go work out. I come home, take a shower. I do some follow ups. I do some cases. I coach for the legal nurse consulting business for the nurses on that side
Hmm.
and help bring other nurses to their success, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we have some group calls, and then I'm able to take my active cases that I'm going through and
Yeah.
share those experiences and those wins. But
Hmm.
I don't. One of the exciting things I was able to bring up two service lines in the largest health system in New York, and
Wow.
I got
Wow.
more kudos from my first attorney clients than I did in that health system for a decade.
Isn't that interesting? Oh, I mean, that tracks.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
definitely
for
tracks.
sure. Um,
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, to me, legalese and medical jargon are two different languages. So really, you have to be fluent in both and have the ability to translate it into layperson speech too. That's which is all, systems and organizational thought as well. But that part really fascinates me is being able to translate the various information tracks that you're trying to get to your clients and to their clients in order for them to pursue their cases. That I was looking through your website and I was like, just the legal terms, like my eyes are just, I'm like, I don't speak this language. It's just amazing to me how much nurses can learn when they're motivated carve out new niches for themselves. So that part is super fascinating to me. What do you think are the qualities and the expertise? You mentioned the operations that you did for that hospital system, that qualify you as an expert in your field, that help set you apart.
So I think any nurse with experience under their belt can certainly pursue the world of legal nurse consulting. Uh,
Mm,
you know what should be done, what should have, would have, and could have been done. And you
yeah.
also know when you're going through records what's missing.
Hmm.
So, for instance, when I'm going through many medical records, there's consults not there, there's patient accountability forms not there. You don't see turning and positioning sheets or accountability. The care
Hmm.
plans aren't there. Maybe things were care planned for once, but when that didn't work out, there never was a revision.
Right.
These are all parts of our brains as nurses across the
Hmm.
board that is our critical thinking. And it's just like when you're getting report from another nurse and
Yes.
you're thinking, what about this? What about that? What about
Right.
comes naturally in?
Yeah.
And
Good point.
once you start getting in on cases, you really see the lawyers are there for the legal side. And,
Hmm.
yes, you need to know a few of their catch red flag words
Mm.
like depositions, interrogatories, trial
Right.
words, statutes of limitation, etc. But beyond a very superficial layer of that, it's really just you and your expertise.
Yeah.
In legal nursing, there's a behind the scenes piece, which is legal nurse consulting, where you're not disclosable to anyone. It's just between you and your attorney client.
Hmm.
The other half of that is expert witnessing. And
Mm,
that's when you need to be a particular expert in your certain realm. So for
right.
me, I'm an expert witness in my last role, which is interfacility transfers. I was
Hmm.
the director over 23 hospitals, integrating not
Wow.
only the interfacility transfer, the specialties, the surgeons, the physicians, but also the transport, including ambulance and helicopter.
Yeah. Wow. Holy moly. That's a lot of moving parts.
It is, but I loved it, and it's
Yeah.
so niche that when attorneys come across me, they wanna get me right
Yeah.
away because they know they're gonna be hard pressed to find someone that has
Right.
that expertise and can speak to it articulately.
Yeah, and that is where the ball gets dropped a lot in care, is those transfers of care, like even within the hospital, like you mentioned. I mean, we've all followed nurses with the charting, and you're just like, I'm not, how did you get from A to B? Like there is a ton of gray area here. And yeah, the holes in the charting, I mean, that was drilled into me in nursing school. And of course, like in practice as well. But yeah, if you've ever followed nurses that have holes in their charting, you worry for them now in the climate that they're in with like redondevad and criminalization of nurses practice is definitely like a real um concern, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And, my favorite realm of legal nurse consulting is plaintiff med mal, but my overwhelming passion when I approach these cases is to bring the question initially, is this a person issue or is this a process issue?
Right,
And
right,
what I do for my attorney clients is I nail it down. 9 times out of 10, it's a process issue. And
right, yeah,
that means poor nurse Jane or Dr.
yeah,
are not accountable alone. And
right,
coming from a director position at my level and writing policy and procedure, I know exactly where those failures are. So I take particular satisfaction in not letting that crap slide downhill, so to speak, without holding
yeah,
proper, responsible parties accountable. And
mm,
then, of course, the attorneys love that because when you can get that high level accountability, it's going to be a higher and
right.
faster settlement.
Yeah, that's true. To keep it out of the court as much as possible is probably what they aim for, I would imagine.
Right. And not to mention, you're sticking up for your fellow healthcare workers
Right.
in impossible situations and predicaments
Yeah.
by not their own choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think system failures are such a huge problem with healthcare right now. And with the spotlight being on nursing so much the past few years, like I feel like we have such a platform to really speak to this. And I think nurses are recognizing or realizing their collective power that they have in speaking up and about the problems and the holes they're seeing in the systems. I'm just curious off the cuff because I mentioned Redonda. Now I'm thinking about it. Do you feel like do you feel like she was given a fair shake with the system, or do you feel like Vanderbilt like got off easy with this whole situation?
Vanderbilt didn't get off easy. They got off completely. And
Complete right. Okay, thank you.
I wish I had a piece of that case.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to think the outcome would have been different.
Yeah. I know. I felt like she just was put under the biggest, baddest bus and just sent a shiver down every nurse's spine that is practicing right now. Which to me just feels like it's going to be more secrecy. Like if you feel like you've made an error, you're now motivated to cover it up rather than to report it, which is, I mean, going to affect patient care. Like, ooh. Anyway, dialing back in, what are the major challenges that you face in your role? How do you manage through them? How do you deal with those?
I think the biggest issue is having an entrepreneurial mindset
Mm,
and being able to stay positive. That's one.
yeah.
And then I say the other 50% of it would be able to get yourself out there. When I started this business, I looked into going into legal nurse consulting several times, but I kept getting promoted. So I was like,
Right.
okay, let me do this and let things settle out. And then finally, someone actually reached out to me on LinkedIn to be an expert witness in interfacility transfer, which I took.
Ah,
Oh my God, I love
you've been waiting. Yeah.
this now.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, aside from that, I had no wins. I had no attorney friends, no attorneys that I knew personally. I just reached out dry and built myself one
Mhm.
brick at a time.
Yeah.
So just being able to have confidence in your own expertise and what you
Yeah.
can bring to the table is the biggest hump for a lot of people initially. And I'm a very confident person with a
Mhm.
master's degree. I'm a certified legal nurse consultant. I've dealt with high level operations,
Yeah.
and even cocky me,
Yeah.
when I started making those calls, that little negative self talk in the back
Yeah.
creeps up and it's like, are you really good enough? And you have
Yeah.
to be able to know within yourself, yeah, I am good enough. And by the way, you're not invited in my head anymore. So see
Yeah.
you.
Right. That's enough out of you.
Right. But I
Yeah.
think, nurses particularly suffer from some of that, which can, be a
Mhm.
barrier to them getting on their business because we have been forced in unbelievable circumstances,
Yeah.
um, not being allowed to uphold any boundaries, even
Mhm.
whether it's personal Maslow hierarchy of needs with peeing, eating,
Mhm.
taking a break, etc. So that transition is very funny when you're moving, and you have to be extremely mindful of that. I
Mhm.
can tell you, in my first few weeks when I was just, educating and getting my network out there, I would sit there for like 8 hours and not pee, and I had to have a conversation with myself and be like, "You can pee now. It's okay.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
yeah."
You can act on those urges.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I love how you bring up the entrepreneurial mindset because I think that is that sense of like imposter syndrome that we've all experienced at some point in our lives, particularly as like new grad nurses. Like when you walk into that first patient's room and you're like, I'm gonna be your nurse, I think, and you feel like you're just in this acting out in this role. But then it just becomes, it's a skill. You learn the skills and then you go on. How do you grow and develop? Do you do a lot of, mindset work or, in addition to like growing your business and marketing skills in addition to your legal nurse consulting skills that you have to build upon too?
Oh, absolutely. Once I took this venture into my own business, I took it as a complete reset for a second chance at life. And I didn't
Yeah.
want to mess it up because now I have nobody but to blame but myself if I'm
Right.
not living the best day every day.
Yeah.
Um, Daily habits are huge. I
Hmm.
start each day with gratitude and most days with some form of working out.
Hmm.
I've integrated yoga a few times a week, and I work on doing affirmations and leading with positivity first,
Yeah.
not only for myself, but for others as well.
Yeah.
Um, as far as education and keeping up on things, as your cases are rolling in and as I'm seeing scenarios pose themselves to me, I'm
Hmm.
looking them up and I'm researching and I'm networking with this huge network of other legal nurse consultants in all other sorts of specialties.
Mm.
And the for that, I have to just say, when I initially started and was like leaning on some people for help, I was
Yeah.
having PTSD when I was a nurse 20 years ago, and it was like a
Mhm.
gang initiation, right?
Yeah, right.
Nurses meet their young, and
Yep.
I can say with full affirmation, this is absolutely the other side of the nursing rainbow. Everyone
Yeah.
across the board is completely supportive and would
Yeah.
love to take the time and discuss not only their expertise but their journey, and it's just magical.
That is really nice to hear. I feel like the tide and just the conversations that I've had with nurses on this platform, in fact, I think it was the very last interview I did before this one, we had someone on who was an expert in workplace bullying, and she was, walking through different scenarios and just the statistics behind it, and the tide does seem to be changing. So that encourages me that this new generation of nurses coming up are just no longer willing to deal with, they seem to know their worth, and aren't going to put up with stuff that we maybe put up with, like you said, 20 years ago,
That's
which is the
right.
same for me. Yeah. But that's so nice to hear that. And then you yourself being a mentor too. I love hearing about that. Can you walk us through some of the more specifics? Like we're all or true crime podcast junkies. A lot of people I know are in the nursing field, obviously without breaking anything, but what are the common allegations that come up in nursing practice that could maybe help nurses avoid these things arriving on their own doorstep in terms of malpractice or negligence claims?
Well, it's really hard to see. I've been in business a little over a year now, and I haven't seen yet one case come across my firm that was
Nice.
100% someone that was like grossly negligent and did
Yeah,
something absolutely wrong. I have not experienced that yet.
that's good.
What I see is deviations in obtaining standards. And as I'm asking for production, meaning as I'm asking for additional documentation to support what story I'm looking to tell,
Hmm. Hmm.
looking for policy,
Yeah,
procedure, but more importantly, competency. You may have a policy, but did you train the staff? What
right.
the staffing? Are they
Yeah,
working in their normal specialty area, or were they forced out in an unfamiliar condition?
right.
So as we're going through all of these things, it's not negligence per se. As
Yeah.
the case advances and we're getting into, depositions and interrogatories, which I also assist attorneys writing pointed clinical and operational interrogatories, we
Hmm.
start uncovering, nurses aren't covering up for their employer, doctors aren't covering up for their employer, because you know what? They're nowhere to be found when they're the ones in the seat.
Yep.
Hey, we've been short-staffed for multiple
Right.
years. We've made complaints. I have documents of my formal complaints.
Right. Yep.
And, these were impossible circumstances. So when
Yeah.
you start getting down that road, which is something, again, I pride myself in showcasing to my attorneys and,
Hmm.
sticking up for the field overall and in general, those
Hmm.
are the things that come up. So if you're in any sort of environment that affords you the opportunity to protest assignment or right when there's some sort of unsafe condition, I
Right.
would take advantage of that every time. And even if you take a picture of it with your phone for your own records, hang
Yeah.
on to that. And if you're somewhere that doesn't offer that, band together. There's strength in numbers.
Hmm.
Like, what
Hmm.
quality? Make a stance and have a say and
Yep.
uphold a boundary for you all
Yeah.
nurses out there, because you can do it. And the new nurses coming in are doing it.
Yeah.
And they're setting
Yeah.
an example for us. So seize that
Yes.
opportunity.
Yeah, that's what I love seeing. I mean, there's so many nurse influencers now on social media, but there's such good information if you find influencers that have reputable information, and definitely do your homework on that. But there really is such great, like, we follow one nurse, I think she goes by Christy PRN, and she's an LPN, I believe, but she's taken up as her cause, of hospital, like the transparency of billing. And it's incredible to see this campaign that's just snowballed, and she has nurses involved and how to help their patients. And it's been like so cool just to watch that whole thing unfold. So I think you made such a good point that you don't have to, like, even just like you said, taking a photo with your own cell phone for your own records. Cause I think a lot of nurses are like, well, where am I documenting this? But you're documenting it for yourself. You're not documenting it like in a patient's chart necessarily, right?
Right. Right. Oh no, I can't advise on that. I know
Right.
that the institutions I worked at, there would be ramifications for documenting on that. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I can't advise on the legalities of that, although I'd love to say, yeah, write it all in there. But
Right. This right here. Yeah.
and in medical record review, you see funny things, and sometimes you see people that have had enough, and they'll just write that in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of read between the lines subtext in narrative charting sometimes where you're like, "Ooh, I wouldn't have written that," but I mean, I don't blame you because I've been in those shoes before and whew, yeah. Um, which speaking of short staffing and nurse burnout and all the things that lead to nurses taking shortcuts or system failures happening, it's such a widespread phenomenon. COVID certainly fueled those flames. But how do you feel like the COVID situation or the latest wave of nurse burnout, the great resignation, whatever you want to call it, um, has led to more malpractice? And what would your advice be to nurses to avoid these things? I mean, we kind of touched on this a minute ago, but is there anything specific that you think COVID added to this where nurses were just in new territory every day? Like there were so many rules and policies that were like, well, we don't normally do it that like with PPE or for instance, that type of thing.
Well, it certainly was an untraveled road, impossible to navigate, and I think that with the fluctuations and the guidelines that were given and the instructions that the healthcare staff had to uphold to, I think we've lost a lot of faith in certain entities that were upheld
Mhm.
in the past. I
Yeah.
can speak for myself. The WHO and CDC have definitely dropped multiple notches, in my opinion, at this point due to their inconsistencies
Yeah.
and lack of transparency. So
Yeah.
it makes it extremely tough to navigate, even
Mhm.
when you bring in vaccine mandations at this point, and now we're seeing all the counter side effects, and we're only a few years in at this point. What's to come in the future?
Yeah.
Again, putting people that are supposed to be advocating with their own degrees and critical thinking skills, but you're
Mhm.
forcing them to march a certain way. So,
Yeah.
how do you navigate? Sounds like a call for a rebellion and a banding together. And it certainly has to be on a large level, federal
Yeah.
and political. For me,
Yeah.
is the only wing that's going to be out of that. No
Right.
nurse will be able to tackle that alone.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think you bring up a good point with that too, in terms of the WHO and the CDC, with like just the amount of political pressure that they were both under. I mean, not so much the WHO, but with the CDC, I feel like the messaging changed depending on who was in charge or who they were reporting to or the data that they were managing. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. But it's certainly interesting to think about it through like a legal lens, because I'm sure a lot of nurses just going into work were like, I don't know what's going to happen today. Like, hope I don't get sued at the end of this when all the dust settles. Definitely a big concern. We're going to switch gears entirely. And I love that you keep bringing up like nurses banding together and the strength in numbers and realizing the collective power that we do have. If you could talk a little bit about community, how has community helped you in shaping the nurse that you are, and what you think nurses can benefit from having a strong community behind them?
Yeah. So community, whether you have someone that's making a large positive impact, where being a really good coach and mentor and supportive of you, or maybe you have someone that really was not supportive and did things that maybe you wouldn't want to repeat. There's still a positivity and a lesson to be learned from that, because you're drawing upon those experiences that
Hmm.
helps you to become a better nurse.
Hmm.
Uh, Nurses are caretakers by proxy, but also by proxy, they take care of themselves the least. Everyone
Hmm.
else comes first. So I really think seeing all of these nursing communities and what you're doing here with Nurse Deck is really helping to draw that and bring that together collectively. Because then, I may not be able to advocate for myself, but I'm the best damn advocate for anybody else I'm trying
Right.
to protect.
So true.
Nurses start at least setting their boundaries and self-care by
Yeah.
watching out for one another. I
Yeah.
hope that one day people that are still in the acute healthcare side of things will be able to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
I think building the community surrounding that is
Hmm.
going to help the nurses and their careers in the best, most positive pathway forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so helpful and encouraging to see people modeling behavior that you're like, I have this situation going on, and then you reach out to your community, you find 10 other people that have gone through it or are going through it, and like, you automatically don't feel alone anymore, which is a pivotal moment for yourself. And then you can learn from the path that they've already walked, which I love social media for that, and virtual communities like the one we have. So um,
Exactly.
and again, like the mentoring that you provide, I think is amazing. Like I love hearing about that. We talk so much about mentorship on our platform, but I think a lot of the nurses get stuck with like, how do I find a mentor? How do I ask? Like literally give me a script, because it's intimidating when you find someone that you're like, damn, like I want to have their career. Like how did they get there? And most people are so willing to talk about A, themselves, and B, helping out another nurse in that framework. So I love that you're doing that like deliberately. I think that's so important for our community. Anything that you want to leave our audience with, any messages or a topic that we maybe didn't cover? I love talking about this. The legal side of nursing is so interesting to me.
Man, I could talk on for this for like an 8-hour
Yeah.
shift. I just love it so much. I would say that the amount of expertise, knowledge, critical thinking, meticulousness, and care that you have is not set within a boundary of a
Mhm.
wage cage or someone that you're working for. You are actually mini CEOs of your patients already. You
Yeah.
just don't see it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that people don't want you to see your own power.
Yeah.
So if you've ever thought about tapping that more, at least be open to looking around and seeing what other options are out there, because you may just find what you love, your purpose in life, and be able to make a huge impact
Mhm.
in empowering not only other nurses, but in my case, the legal system.
Yeah. Whew, that's good. That is awesome. We're gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for talking with us and sort of drawing back the curtain on a profession that I know a lot of nurses are really curious about. We're gonna include ways for nurses to get in touch with you, and to follow along and find out more information, if they're interested in this line of work. So thank you very much for giving us your time today.
Thank you for having me and allowing me to share my wonderful journey.
Yeah, awesome.